Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. My guest today is the Saudi Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Adel al-Jubeir. Mr. Minister, thank you very much for being on the show.
Glad to be here.
Mr. Minister, the situation in the Gulf is extremely tense. A very direct question: how close are we to a war between Iran and the United States, or between Iran and its allies in the region?
Everybody is trying to avoid war in the region. War would be dangerous for everyone. However, the escalation has always come from the Iranian side. Iran attacked tankers in the Gulf, not once but twice. Iran sent ballistic missiles and drones through its proxies, the Houthis, against Saudi Arabia's oil pipeline and against Saudi airports. The Iranians have engaged in aggressive behavior and threatening moves, and so it's really up to the Iranians to de-escalate.
How close were we to a U.S. strike? The U.S. president has said he essentially called it off after a U.S. drone was shot down. And were you informed about this impending U.S. intervention?
The U.S. the president said that he called it off 10 minutes before it was supposed to be launched, and I have no reason to question the President of the United States.
Were you informed?
I cannot get into the consultations that we have with our allies.
But I assume you have very close consultations on this issue?
We work very closely with the United States and with our other allies in the GCC. We have, in terms of exchanging information and in terms of consulting on what steps should be taken.
But would you consider a military strike against Iran justified? You've described Iran's behavior. Do you think it would be warranted for a U.S. or a U.S. and allied strike against Iran?
Iran has to know that its aggressive behavior cannot continue, and Iran has to know that there are consequences for its aggressive...
Military consequences?
There are a number of options that are available and that one can think through, and I will not get into those options if you allow me.
But the military option should clearly be one of those options.
I believe all options are on the table.
Are you aware of cyber attacks against Iran?
I cannot get into details of what may or may not happen.
What are the red lines for Saudi Arabia vis-à-vis Iran? If Iran blocks the Straits of Hormuz or conducts obviously a direct attack against Saudi Arabia?
I believe a red line would be, the issue of the Straits of Hormuz would be a red line for the world, because it has an impact on energy supplies, on the price of oil, which has an impact on the global economy, which has an impact on every individual living on this earth. So that's, we have made it very clear that we don't want war with Iran, but that we will not allow Iran to commit aggression against us.
Has there been a direct aggression? You've mentioned the Houthis striking Saudi soil. Have there been attempts directly by Iran against Saudi Arabia in recent time?
The missiles that were launched at Saudi Arabia, more than 230, I believe, so far, and the remotely piloted aircraft that were launched against Saudi Arabia that have done damage to Saudi facilities and that have injured people, especially at the last attack against the airport in Abha, these are all Iranian manufactured and Iranian supplied.
But it's not a direct Iranian attack. Have you seen any attempts?
We haven't seen anything come from Iran directly to Saudi Arabia, but we have seen a lot of Iranian manufactured and supplied equipment coming into Saudi Arabia from Yemen.
Are you in favor of additional sanctions? The U.S. president has announced there will be very tough sanctions against Iran. Do you think sanctioning further is the way to try to de-escalate this crisis, or could it have the opposite effect?
No, we are for sanctions. I believe that anything that can be done to increase the pressure on Iran to change its policies should be done.
What kind of sanctions would you favor, for instance?
I think they're looking at sanctions involving perhaps the gas sector. They're looking at sanctions, other sanctions. And I will leave this to the financial experts and the economic experts. But the idea is to increase the pressure on Iran so that Iran knows that there's a high price it has to pay and that Iran's policies are not acceptable and have to change.
Would you be in favor of a full embargo on Iranian oil exports, for instance?
We are.
Yes?
Do
you think this is feasible?
In terms of the feasibility, again, I leave it to the experts, but Iran's exports have dropped substantially from where they were. Their ability to export is very, very limited. And I think anything that can be done to add to the economic pressures against Iran can only be helpful.
Have they tried to reach out to Saudi Arabia in recent times, or not at all?
What they've done is allowed ballistic missiles to be launched against Saudi Arabia and drones to be launched against Saudi oil pipelines. This is what they've done. The Iranians have been very threatening. in their behavior, very aggressive in their behavior. They have attacked shipping in the Gulf, and they have provided suicide boats to the Houthis to use in order to disrupt shipping in the Bab el-Mandeb area in the Red Sea.
So if they call you tomorrow, you say, I don't want to talk anymore, it's too late?
Look, we've been talking to the Iranians for 40 years. It got us nowhere.
But you don't talk anymore.
It got us nowhere. We reach out our hand, and all we get is death and destruction. We get our embassies attacked, we get our diplomats assassinated, we get terror cells planted in Saudi Arabia.
So no more dialogue with
And so if we wanted to see a change in behavior, we want to see a change in policy.
In regime?
That's up to the Iranian people. We want a change in policy. We don't want a country that commits aggression against us and our allies.
I want to get to the report by the UN Special Rapporteur on Jamal Khashoggi. I know Saudi Arabia reacted quite vividly, saying it was a flawed report, that there have been contradictions, and that Saudi is pursuing its own investigation and legal procedures. However, there are a few elements that are troubling, especially the role of a man by the name of Saud al-Qahtani, who is said to have played a key role in this murder and who is apparently not on trial in Saudi Arabia. How could you explain that?
Well, first of all, we take issue with the report because there's no legal basis for the report, one. Number two, the rapporteur made up her mind before she even started working on this report. From day one, she accused Saudi Arabia of being guilty.
But you didn't collaborate with her.
Why should we? We don't recognize it. She has a history before she was even in this position of being hostile towards Saudi Arabia. You can look at her social media accounts and just establish the fact that she's not friendly to Saudi Arabia. Now, the report itself has many contradictions. It's based on news reports and it's based on anonymous sources. And
Turkish intelligence.
She says that, and all of it was leaked to the media. She says that the trials that are taking place in Saudi Arabia are secret. That's not true. There are representatives of the permanent 5 members of the Security Council attending those trials, as well as representatives from Turkey, as well as representatives from Saudi NGOs. So it's not a secret trial. With regards to the individual you asked me about, he was dismissed from his position.
But he's not on trial.
And he is under investigation. The prosecutor has brought charges against 11, but the investigations are ongoing, and if any evidence is unearthed, there may be more charges brought against other individuals.
Because the Consul General, for instance, in Istanbul, is also apparently not on trial according to the report, which might sound strange given all we know what happened inside the consulate.
He was not available at the time the crime was committed. He was not aware of it. He explained where he was. He had friends who were with him. We asked the Turkish government to validate this, and they did. And so that is why I believe there were no charges filed against him. However, keep in mind, the trials are ongoing. The investigation is ongoing.
They could be widened. This is what you're saying.
If more evidence is unearthed and other individuals are implicated, it could be widened. 5 of the 11 people charged are facing the death penalty. We are taking this very seriously. The King and the Crown Prince have made it very clear that we will investigate this and we will unearth the truth and we will hold those who committed this heinous crime responsible, and we will punish them to the fullest extent of the law.
The rapporteur asked the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to open an international probe. What if he does?
We don't believe that this is an issue that should be considered. We believe that we have proper investigators who can conduct a proper investigation, and we believe we have a proper court system that can adjudicate any legal proceedings. So there is no basis for any kind of international.
So if he does this, you would consider this as an adversarial step vis-à-vis Saudi Arabia?
I don't, absolutely, there's no basis for this. When you have an international investigation when you don't have the capability of investigating yourself, or if you don't have the capability of adjudicating yourself. We have all of this. These were Saudi citizens who murdered another Saudi citizen in a Saudi facility. We are the proper venue for investigating and the proper venue for adjudicating. If anyone has any evidence that they believe would be germane to this case, we would be happy to receive it, and we have made that very clear to the Turkish authorities.
And they haven't been collaborating?
Unfortunately, not as much as we would have liked.
I want to get quickly to the issue of the Palestinian. There's supposed to be an economic conference. The White House presented a project, $50 billion over 10 years for the Palestinians. The Palestinian Authority has said this is a sham. It shouldn't be happening. An economic conference without a political framework. However, a number of Arab countries will be participating. Saudi Arabia will be sending a minister. What's your response to the Palestinians saying this is essentially a betrayal of our cause?
Well, I think the key about this is an economic conference. It's about improving the living conditions in the Palestinian territories.
Without political horizon.
It's not a political process. Keep in mind...
Isn't this a mistake?
Well, people forget that John Kerry worked on something similar, where he brought in U.S. investors and U.S. companies and companies from the region in order to help with the Palestinian economy. People also forget that a few years before that, Tony Blair, as the representative of the quartet, tried also to bring investments. So hopefully this will not fail. I think that anything that improves the situation of the Palestinian people is something that should be welcomed. Now, having said that, the political process is extremely important.
But it's being delayed. Now it's November, no one knows. I mean, are you saying that if there's no political component to this, this will clearly be a failure? And are you conveying this to the Americans?
We hope that there will be a political process launched.
You're not sure?
We believe that the political process has to be based on the Arab Peace Initiative and the relevant UN Security Council resolutions, ending up with a Palestinian state along the 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. That's our position. That's the position of the Arab world. That's the position of the Islamic world. That's the position of most European countries.
But not the Trump administration,
and that's the position of the Palestinians. And so the Palestinians are the ones who have the ultimate decision in this, because it's their issue. And so whatever the Palestinians accept, I believe everybody else will accept. And they've made it clear that this is what they accept, what I just mentioned.
Do you trust the Trump administration will deliver on its deal of the century, or do you start to have doubts because it's being postponed more?
I'm not going to question the administration of an allied country. I believe that they're trying their best to come up with a plan that will be successful. We have not seen the plan. I believe that the reason you have more delays in the plan is because the consultations with other countries and with others about this plan are ongoing. And so I don't see the delay as a negative. I think it's an attempt to try to put forth the plan that is most likely to succeed. But having said that, I don't know the outlines of the plan. So once it's put on the table, we can judge it.
Thank you very much, Adel al-Jubeir, for coming on the France 24 set. And thank you for watching this edition of The Interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.